Okay, so this is the wheel demo for the chip and dip set. So today I'm going to show you how to make a one-piece chip and dip set. So we've got the larger chip dish and the smaller dip dish, all connected as one, no slipping or scoring. It's just all one piece. I'm going to show you how to make that today on the pottery wheel. Okay, the project does not have to be done all in one piece. It does not have to be done on the wheel. I do want to show you this technique though, because it can be used in other ways as well. So just to start off with, I am using the large 14-inch bat because we're making a larger surface area project. You really want to get the largest bat. Even if your project doesn't reach all the way out there, it still helps to use the larger bat. Also, quite a large piece of clay because I'm making a pretty large project. I'm gonna get it on there. Make sure that it's wedged really, really well, especially because it's such a large piece of clay. Make sure you've got that gumdrop shape. Make sure it's really stuck on there. If you have trouble centering clay in smaller amounts, so let alone this large amount, I do have some links on the Chip and Dip PowerPoint for some pointers and some different methods of centering large amounts of clay. So I'm gonna try to do it just all as one piece, but if you have trouble, there are some links on the PowerPoint that could help, okay? So full speed for centering. I'm gonna start by coning up. Okay, remember the goal is that the middle point is always the tallest point while centering. Okay, make sure you're anchored in, make sure you're flexing your muscles. Cone down. Okay, even though eventually we're making a fairly short piece, while we're centering, we really want to make sure that we're keeping that gumdrop shape. Okay. Cone up. Make sure you get any excess clay off of the bat. Cone down. Okay, really, really important that you're staying anchored in. I'm almost using my body weight up against my elbow to help stay steady, to help me center. Okay, getting closer again, keeping that gumdrop shape. Trying to give equal pressure between my hands so that I force it into the center. Okay, looking pretty good. And now that we're pretty centered, because this is a much wider, shorter project, I'm actually gonna go ahead now that I'm centered and I'm gonna flatten my project a little bit, or my lump of clay. So that automatically I'm giving myself some of that width. Okay, so first step, I'm gonna make a hole just like I make a hole in any other vessel project. Okay, so I'm gonna anchor in, I'm gonna hover my thumbs, and I'm gonna push down into the center. Now remember, because I've flattened my clay a little bit, make sure that you don't make your hole too deep, okay? Once I make that hole, I am not actually gonna open it at all. I'm gonna kind of flatten the top here, okay? So that hole is gonna become my dip dish. I'm gonna slow down a little bit. And then about maybe half an inch, a little bit more outside of that hole, I am going to start making a moat. Okay, so you can maybe see where this is going. Make sure that you're only using one thumb, don't use two or you'll get off center. I want to be pushing straight down. Okay, so you can kind of see this is going to become the dip, or the chip dish. This is going to become the dip dish. Once I've kind of established that moat of clay, I'm gonna switch to my sponge and I'm gonna push down, and then I'm actually gonna start opening it a little bit. I'm gonna open it enough that I can measure my base. Now, for a wider surface area project, you really wanna make sure that your base is no thinner than 1/4 inch. Okay, so you might actually stay on the thicker side. Not too thick, but maybe on the thicker side of 1/4 inch. So, now that I've gotten a flattened area where I can measure my base, I'm gonna stick my needle tool in there, get an accurate read. We are just a teeny tiny bit thicker than 1/4 inch, so we are going to go with that. And now we wanna go ahead and keep widening this until we get to the width that we want. So a couple measurement markers that will be helpful. Your bat is 14 inches wide. Once your project is dry, the width of this chip part needs to be 10. So I would say if you went right around 11 with wet clay, you should be good. So one thing that I wanna make sure of, you are pushing right where the walls meet the base to widen it. You wanna make sure that you're bringing the base with you as you widen. Otherwise, if you're just widening the walls, they're gonna get much wider than the base and they're gonna flop. So just make sure as you are opening, the base is coming with you. Every once in a while, I'm gonna kind of go back and forth on the base to make sure that I still have a nice even base thickness, okay? You're gonna notice that the walls are gonna get much shorter because you're using that clay to get your width, okay? Again, I'm kind of compressing, I'm going back and forth. And I'm gonna go ahead and grab a ruler. Looking at this ruler, I am just about at 11, so I'm happy with that. So I'm gonna take a couple measurements, make sure that we're pretty equal all the way across. Okay, right around 1/4 inch, right around 1/4 inch, right around 1/4 inch. So we're good there. Just gonna smooth those away. And then we are gonna leave these walls short for now. I don't want to hit them with my wrists as I'm trying to work on this part. So I'm gonna leave them short, and I'm gonna come back to the middle part and I'm going to work on the chip dish. Okay, so I'm gonna treat this just like any other bowl. So I've got my hole, I'm gonna open it up until I can get in there to measure my base. And then it's very important on the chip and dip set. I would say this is the #1 project that cracks. It tends to get a C crack like that. And it's due to thicknesses being different because there are so many different areas. We've got the wall thickness on the dip dish, the base thickness on the dip dish, this wide surface area thickness on the chip dish, and then the walls on the chip dish. So many different parts. If any part of it is a different thickness and dries at a different rate, it's gonna cause cracking. So really important that we are checking our thicknesses. So once I even that out, I'm gonna stop my wheel and I'm gonna check the thickness on my dip dish. And we are right about at the same, so I can go ahead and continue. So I'm gonna start pulling up my walls. Okay, just be careful you don't dig into the base of your chip dish. I'm gonna pull it up just like any other little bowl. We want it at about 1/4 inch. Got some unevenness going on here, and I know that I have too much clay anyway. I'm gonna trim cut. Okay, make sure that you pay attention right where your walls meet your base so that you don't have too much thickness there. And then we really want to make sure that this is easy to dip in. So if you think about what you would want to dip into, this is going to shrink. This might be a little small to get your hand and a chip in it. So we want to widen it up a little bit. Once I get my wall thickness correct, which it is, I think I'm going to go ahead and widen. So I'm pushing on that inside wall. Okay, and you can kind of test it. Make sure that it would be easy to dip into, okay? We also want to make sure that we could fit a significant amount of dip in it. Okay, again, remember your clay is going to shrink. We want this to be functional once it's dry. Okay, so I think that's pretty good. I like that shape. Thickness all over is pretty good. I've got a nice rounded inside, so it'll be easy to dip into. Okay, once I've got that all taken care of, my thickness is good everywhere, it's equal everywhere. I'm gonna slow down even a little bit more. And the last thing that I'm gonna do, I'm gonna come out here and I'm gonna pull up my chip dish walls. Okay, I'm gonna pull them straight up and down to start with so that I don't risk flopping. Okay, make sure that you're not digging into your base. And once I get those to right about 1/4 of an inch, then if I would like to shape them at all, if you feel like you need to do a trim cut, you can. I'm gonna go ahead and angle them out. I'm gonna kind of try to mimic the angle that I have on my dip dish. Okay. Make sure everything's nice and even. And then I am gonna go ahead and one more time, I'm going to check my thickness in multiple spots. Okay, that all looks pretty similar. Sponge those away. Smooth everything out. And then the last step, I'm gonna take my rib and I'm gonna carefully cut my foot. Make sure that you aren't letting your wheel go too quick. If your wheel's going too quick, you could cause your walls to flop. So be careful there. I cut my foot. If it's really difficult to get under there to cut your foot, you can take off your splash guard for that part. And then we really, really want this to dry nice and evenly. So what I would recommend, and we really want it to dry fairly slowly as well. So any chance that you have to just leave it out in open air, I would do that. If you're gonna add anything to it, engobe, impressing, adding, subtracting. Remember I talked about not carving or adding anything to the inside. And we really need to be conscious of the thickness. So if you're carving deep down in or adding lots of clay, that's changing the thickness of the clay and could also cause cracking. So underglaze may be a good bet for decorating or sgraffito. Slip trailing would even be okay, but again, you really want to keep the inside of the dip dish smooth so that you can dip into it. So I would try to keep it out in open air as much as possible. We want it to dry fairly slowly, so when you put it away for the day, as long as you're done adding, subtracting, impressing, engobe, whatever else you might be doing to it, I would maybe, in your shelf space, just really carefully put a bag, like just drape it over top of it so that it will kind of keep the air out and let it dry slowly, but it'll still keep it equally covered, okay? So then any day that you are working, you can just sit it out and let it air dry naturally as you can let it sit out with you, okay? So that is the one-piece chip and dip set on the wheel.